we welcome you back, Swagatam, to this sacred precincts where we are discussing for hours on end sometimes the unique perspective of Vedanta. And Vedanta, as I was saying yesterday, is a coverall that in this day and age, according to Vivekananda's new dispensation from Sri Ramakrishna about such great darshanas or clear ways of seeing, includes Tantra and Yoga and Jainism and Sikhism and Samkhya and Shaktism and Vaishnavism and Shaivism, the whole field of and gamut of profound teachings that come from India's vast experiences, long, vast experiences with spirituality. They've had a particular bent or penchant, if you will, for concentrating on that and clearing up all the anomalies and making connections for people through the centuries into these teachings so as to keep them healthy in the soul, basically. And they know if they're healthy in their soul, then they'll be healthy in their intellects and in their minds, and then body and senses will follow along. So pure mind or clear mind is khyati, the clarity that clears up the mind, has always been extremely important to them. So what we're studying, of course, is mind-only schools, because they feel like from the mind everything is preceded, and beyond mind there's just pure mind, which is the same as Brahman. And when the soul clears up the mind, then it ceases to be an impediment or tripping on itself, and that's why pure mind is God, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, or Buddha mind is Buddha nature, as Lord Buddha said in the Dhammapada. So then we concentrate more on the mind in Vedanta, because we know the body will follow suit with better health, and then our spiritual life will also open up to us. And meditation, of course, is one of those practices that's uniquely of the mind. If you can lift it above the considerations of body and five senses and the sense objects, then it begins to contemplate its own self, look into its own nature. And we were talking about that in terms of the kingdoms of heaven within, and the you of Om, which is Vishnu's province, how everything gets preserved for long periods of time, how your ancestors and your loved ones are still in you all the time, and they're returning not only physically in rebirth, but in your dreams, and recurring to you all the time, showing themselves up to be eternal principles. In India, everything is eternal, which is what we've been saying here. Everything is Sarvosmi, or all is Brahman. You can look at those as philosophical statements, but if you want to really make them pertain to your life in relativity, then you can also look at them very practically. That everything is eternal means there's no beginning, middle, and end to nature. There's no beginning, middle, and end to your soul. There's no beginning, middle, and end to God. It's all eternal. It's all the time. And unfortunately, there's no beginning, middle, and end to Maya either. The province of name and form and time space keeps persisting through the aeons, even through ages that most of us in the West aren't aware of, because we haven't been taught about yugas of time, which are these extremely vast cycles where everything's cycling and coming back around. As if we think that maybe, this 15 million year march of the hominidae, of which we have been a part of as animals and humans, is the theory, is not a very long time compared to how long the earth has existed and where it was supposed to have begun thousands and thousands of years prior to that. But that's a very small amount of time that an earth can form and grow species and then explode, or a sun can do the same, explode at the end. It's a very short amount of time compared to the concept of time that's been understood by the Hindu mind as it contemplated timelessness. It had to see beyond time first in order to understand how vast time is, and come to a conclusion that time is illusory, that basically There's no beginning, middle, and end to it. So that's what we mean when we say everything is eternal. And why I would say that if you're a seeker after freedom, you might start considering the eternity of everything. Best to start with Brahman and your soul, but also very good to understand that life can go on eternally in cycles too. Not just, oh, I've had hundreds or thousands of lifetimes, but I might have had millions of lifetimes in different cycles. So everything persists all the time. And so when you're coming back in the body for the first time, you think it's the first time, and you pass from the body, and you experience birth, life, and death enough, you have some scar or this impression in your mind that I have lived before. That's, call it deja vu in contemporary times. I have this feeling I've been here before, I've lived before. And that's really just a very, very tiny pinpoint, or a very small part of the whole equation. That you've not just been here before, but you've been here many times, and you'll be here many times more. And it's all up to the matter of the mind choosing how many bodies it wants to take. If you know that everything comes from seeds, and you've been watching this carefully, and you know that body, senses, and mind leave off, and body, senses leave off with objects, and then the mind takes over, and then the intellect takes over, then there must be this hierarchy of conditioning that is happening all the time, that bodies are being formed out of the seeds of intelligence, you see. And we would think then, looking from the outside in our scientific view, that bodies come from the combination of sperm and ovum in the mother's womb, and a fetus develops, and there's a amount of years to your lifetime, and then you die, and then another fetus is born, and there are millions of happening, and hundreds and hundreds have been born and died since I started talking 3 hours ago, or 2 hours ago. So we're looking at it from the outside in only, and always cheating ourselves of the truth of eternity, you might say, and being aware of the eternal nature of all things. These are the consummate statements on that. So not just philosophical, although you can take them apart philosophically, and there are pages and pages in the Brahma Sutras on each of those. I mean, each word gets chapters, and they will take it apart like we took Om apart here, because they know that there's a great power in words, concepts, words, thoughts, and those are part of the seeds out of which everything comes. So to them, everything came out of the mind and its thinking process. It didn't come out of nature. It didn't come out of the 5 elements. That was an add-on later. See? Everything was sort of like an architect, construct a pattern, a house in his head, then he'll get the materials to put it together. But the whole thing was in his head before he did that. That is, if he has a degree and if he's smart. See? But it's the same with the architect of the universe, which, by the way, is not Brahman. Brahman doesn't create anything in my tradition. It's a-create. Swamiji coined that word. It doesn't create, project, and destroy things. The mind does that. The mind is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity, or the Shakti will be in charge of that, you see. Brahman stays completely formless and free of motion, free of production, and it doesn't even enter into the projection process, you see. It stays free and clear, and that's the Turiya of Om, or the Samadhi state, or Nirvana, Buddha called it. You have to find that, and then you'll declare these things when you do. But in the meantime, it's the mind that's giving rise to all of this, and it'll use nature to solidify things. Bodies, mountains, rivers, worlds, universes are really nothing to the mind. All the billions of suns in this sky only exist here, but the source to them exists in the mind. The word sun exists in the mind. The power of the sun exists in the mind. The light of the sun, of a billion suns, exists in the mind. It all starts off with a word. So this isn't just a creation theory, and it's not a 7-day creation theory. Certainly, although you could metaphorically or symbolically explain the 7-day creation theory in a more illumined way, not just take it literally. but the 7 days has to be like maybe 7 lokas or 7 chakras, you see. You're going to have to assign it in a different way to provide for this vast eternity that's always going on, that goes into form and then slips out of form to formlessness all the time without you noticing it. And that's why we meditate on Sri Ramakrishna or on Divine Mother or on Shiva. I mean, we'll sing songs about Om in terms of those beings, like Jaya Shiva Omkara, Jaya Shiva Omkara, Brahma Vishnu Sadashiva, Hara Hara Mahadeva, Hara Hara Mahadeva, Brahma Vishnu Sadashiva, Hara Hara Mahadeva, Hara Hara Mahadeva. Jaya Shiva Omkara. So, salutations to Lord Shiva, who is in the word Omkara. You know, this is the deep sleep state as the dissolution of all things. And after he gets through with his powers, then he will pass it on to Lord Brahma, who is the creator or projector. And that will start over again, start the whole process. In between creation, preservation, and destruction, over these many ages, there's a lapse. They call that pralaya, where everything's gone formless and there's nothing. You'll hear that mentioned in the Bible. You'll hear it mentioned in the Rig Veda about this great waters of existence, sometimes they call it, and God will breathe upon them, as it were, or Divine Mother will cause waves on them. That's the Om, you see, in a latent state, completely waveless ocean, and then some force will come along and cause waves in it. And out of that will come these worlds, you see. And this is happening at the level of the cosmic mind, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity. And it's also happening in all the worlds that come out of the conjunction of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are also assigned to A, U, and M of Om. The Triputis all connect to each other. So whether you look at it through the deities, if you believe in deities or powers, or you look at it philosophically, or you look at it cosmologically, you have to look at it. That's what Jesus told John in the Garden of Gethsemane. You have to know the Word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So that became a very profound subject for John, and I think he meditated on it most of his life. You really can't know where you've come from and how it all proceeds if you want to be a knower of reality, unless you contemplate the Word, which is the origin of all things. So I was saying earlier when I backed up to that chart, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. In the beginning, there's no beginning, and Jesus knew that. So he said, in the beginning was the Word. So the Word is the beginning of things, not God. God has no beginning, middle, and end. It's causeless, which is what we saw here in our slokas yesterday of the Amritabindu Upanishad. You know, it's beyond cause. Brahman is, without doubt, endless, beyond reason, beyond analogy, beyond proof, and is causeless, knowing which the wise ones become free. So there's no cause and effect in Brahman. You can see that here. There's cause and effect in the waking. There's cause and effect in dreaming. Effect goes away in deep sleep, but there's still a cause there because you return from deep sleep. But here there's no cause and effect. There's no time. And here's where they declare these great things. I am Brahman. I and my Father are one. Sri Ramakrishna said, and I can paraphrase him, when I meditated and I heard Om, I followed it. And when I found Om, I saw that worlds were coming out of it and worlds were dissolving back into it. They came out of it, they existed, and they dissolved back in, but no time was passing. That's a very strange statement. We're thinking in terms of time, right? Either the time of 15 million years since we've been here in this hundreds and thousands of years that the Earth has existed in a universe full of Earths and moons and suns. We're thinking in that terms, that kind of time. Oh, that's a vast amount of time. But what about no time? when the mind isn't in time, like Buddha's mind was not in time when he saw time. He saw it as a circle and people in it, a cycle, and he was free of it. So he was in a timeless state, just like you are in deep sleep. You don't know what's happening in deep sleep. Neither do you know what's happening after your death, most people. You just hardly know what's happening even when you take your first breath in your next life. It takes you a long time to consider it. You're caught on the wheel of time. But those beings who are free are in a timeless state. So Buddha said at the end of his life, if you stay in the river, you'll cycle. All you need to do is get out of the river and sit on the banks. If you sit on the banks and watch, you'll see the same thing go by again. Then you'll know everything's cyclic. So you need to get out of the river of birth and death, watch your ancestors go by again, and have a conscious life. Oh, I've seen you before, or oh, I've been there before. Deja vu, right? You get out and you affirm for yourself that everything's cyclic, and you don't want to be on cycles anymore. You don't want to be caught in time, you don't want to be restricted to space, and you don't want to have a name and a form assigned to you that you have to give up later. See? That's why your guru gives you a spiritual name. You don't give up your spiritual name. Even if you do, you let others have their spiritual name. At least give them that. You see, because they've taken a new birth. It's common in religion to take a new birth. You give up your old family, you take on a new family. Because why? Because Jesus said, I've not come to bring peace, I've come to bring a sword, and with the sword I'll separate you from your father. I'll separate you from your mother. I'll separate you from your mother-in-law, father-in-law. Of course, if you follow the stereotype of mother-in-laws, that's a good thing if you're separated from her. So all of this clinging to form and name and personalities, it's going to get washed away anyway at the time of death, so why not give it up before that? Save yourself a lot of pain, see? Because it's going to happen anyway. And even using that reasoning, that ideology, better would be to actually know that all of these beings exist in you and they're cycling in you in them. And then you might want to consider getting off those cycles. Enjoy them, experience them for a while. They become wearying. It's sort of like getting on a merry-go-round when you're a kid, as compared to getting on a merry-go-round after you've eaten a big meal. See? When you're full, you don't want to be on those merry-go-rounds anymore. And you don't want to stand near a merry-go-round full of people who have just eaten either. So that's how they feel about freedom, you see. I've been there, done that. I think I want to be free now, and I'll just watch as a witness. Like the old warrior who nobody can kill. Finally, he just drops his sword during one battle, walks to the top of a hill and watches. His only interest now is what happens. Who wins what, you know. And even that's kind of no big deal anymore, because sometimes his side wins, sometimes the other side wins. It goes back and forth like that. So it's rather pointless and ongoing, you see. So he just becomes what we call the witness, Sakshi Bhutam. All phenomena is cycling. Forests are burning by the thousands. People are dying. Creatures are dying. People are committing sins. People are committing good acts. And that's all going all the time. He says it's all unreal. Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Only Brahman is real. The world isn't. The world of phenomena is not real. It wants to try and convince me it is, and that's my folly. When I believe it is my folly. So I think I will just retire, you see, and I will be myself, and that's what all these statements mean. Now, if you want to go on with this and grant a little more credence to your life, not everyone can just all of a sudden say, I renounce everything, you see. Monks can do that, great souls can do that. Other people have to approach it by stages, let's say. Because it is the truth in the end. You are the formless essence, and form does cloud the issue and confuse things. So you're going to want to entertain the idea of being a formless entity, even if you decide to keep form. It's a better way to live, like Vivekananda lived and so forth. So he says, I'm not in the world, the world is in me. So you are in it, God is not, God did not create you, you created God. So it's a concept in your mind. And when you turn the mind off, then you'll give up the idea of creating, and you'll give up the idea of becoming, and you'll give up the idea of evolving, and you'll give up the ideas of time and space and worlds being real, and you'll just witness everything. That's bliss. See up there on the board, Sloka 6. Atman, Swarupa, is beyond thought. It is bliss, is what he said in Sloka 6. Bliss with a capital B, unalloyed and uninterrupted, not like happiness or elation, see, up and down, ping-pong ball kind of existence, but it's constant bliss. They carry that around with them. So anyway, if you're a person that is entertaining such a level of non-duality, as we say, which is the Advaita part of Vedanta, and that's of course what makes Vedanta so attracting and also so difficult of access for people, non-duality. Not a lot of people can jump to it. I remember walking into a bookstore when in my 30s, and I was looking for certain books, and I said, "Do you have this book and that book?" I asked the lady, and she said, "Oh, I see, you're a non-dualist. You should go over there." See, so I went over to where they were keeping the non-dual books and picked up what I wanted, you see. So she just had me pegged, see. Anyone who walks in that shop, if they're speaking that language, then they want to go over there, So otherwise, if you're approaching that, as I keep saying here, I keep approaching what I'm trying to say, you're going to go to the non-dual, qualified non-dual statements. This is called Vishishta Advaita, and this is called Advaita. So the Vishishta Advaita is the next rung of the ladder, the next step down. And then the final step down is duality. And that's where most people operate at. Philosophically, whether they're philosophers or not, they're dualists. They believe God and mankind are separate, that God's in heaven and they're on earth. I mean, that's just a kind of fundamental dualism that most people operate under. And so they haven't started that inner search that's beginning to make them feel like, gee, maybe there is no separation between myself and God. Maybe I am that. And there's been a wool pulled over my eye here for a long time. I mean, Muslims, Jews, Advaita Vedantists in India, Zen Buddhists, they all really believe this. When they say there's one God, they're not excluding humanity from it. The problem there is that in some of those religions, God can come into the form as God, and other times it can't come into the form. It only could come in as a prophet or a messenger. So some of them don't believe that God can take on the flesh, you see. God's not there. And actually the Advaitas would rather agree with that in some ways. But the principle of God in human flesh gives validity to the whole realm of duality and qualified non-dualism. Jesus knew that. And Vivekananda used to quote Jesus when he said, put Jesus' sayings in this perspective. He said, if you were teaching a dualist who understood at that level, then you teach them, pray to your Father in heaven, see, because they need to have some support. And you can't pull the rug out from under them when they're not ready for it. At least they believe in some sort of divine presence. You see, they just don't believe it's in them yet. It's like Sri Krishna said, the musk deer running around looking for that fragrance on the wind. Right? You see, boy, that's beautiful. Finally finds out it's in its own navel. You see, so that's the predicament of a dualist. They don't know that that scent of divinity is actually coming from their own being, and they're projecting it outwards and looking everywhere out here. And we know the trouble with that. I'll never find God out here. And in other words, you're looking for God in all the wrong places, to look for it within. So Jesus would say that, but if he was talking to the Pharisees or the Sadducees or some of the rabbis, he would say, well, the way I've understood this truth is that I'm the vine and you're the branches. So you get to the Father through the Son, right? So you take up a great soul, you make them your ideal, like we would take Vivekananda or Sri Ramakrishna, and then you follow that ideal, and you get to the Father through the Son. And in that way, they act as the vine that connects you to the top of the tree, if you will, and you're the branch. So that's qualified non-dualism, you see. Now you have a connection to God that wasn't there before when you were a dualist, whereas God and man can never come together. East and West shall never meet, Rudyard Kipling said. Yeah. So those philosophers say God and man will never meet. They're two separate realities. But the Advaitist comes along and says, what do you mean? There can't be two separate realities. Reality is one. It doesn't make sense to call it two. That's doing a disservice to it. So we have to understand what oneness really means. And then comes in, I and my Father are one, is how Jesus would have talked to his disciples. When they ask him who he was, he said, I and my Father are one. When he asked them, when they asked him who he was, he said, who do you think that I am? He would ask them the same question. Who do you say that I am? Now, the same question was asked to Sri Ramakrishna. Girish Ghosh said, you're God in human flesh. Some of the others couldn't say that. Say, oh, you're the avatar, or you're the incarnation, or you're the prophet, or you're the messenger, or you're a great soul, or you're a seer, or you're a saint. But God can't come into flesh, you see. So all these psychological exercises, you might call, to the mind, to try and settle these issues, are very well put in India's way of the three stages of philosophy: Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita, and Advaita. So, I mean, I won't really have statements so much on Dvaita here, but you'll know what that is because most beings are around you are dualists. If they're anything, they're dualists. Maybe they're atheists, but atheist is just another kind of non-dualist. But if you take up the non-dual statements, you'll see things like aham etatna. I am not this. See? So there you have this practice of neti-neti in Vedanta. I'm not body, I'm not senses. Found that I'm not even my mind. See? I'm something else entirely, something of a unique stature and consistency. I am the quality of consciousness. I'm the greenness of the tree. I might appear to, but there's the tree and its greenness, but they're really one thing, and you can't take one out of the other. See? It's not like oil and water that you can separate quite easily. That's a teaching for God and mammon. But I am the green of the tree is a teaching for the qualified non-dualist, explaining how he or she feels so drawn to reality. That it's become his heart's love and his mind's single object of concentration. That's how to, Upanishad is just telling us how to merge the heart, the mind into the heart. Yesterday's sloka said that, remember? Not yesterday's slokas, the slokas probably at 5. The mind should be controlled to the extent in which it gets merged in the heart. So the mind has to take up its ideal, like I was just saying, and then merge that in its heart. So it's your heart's fondest love blended with your mind's highest ideal. See, that's a completely winsome concept. See? There's no loser in that. You'll reach a consummate end with that kind of thinking. So, aham etatna, I am not this, is a practice of negativity to get to the positive. That's qualified, you see, because it's talking about two things. Anaham tvam, not I, thou, is a qualified non-dual statement. Seems very non-dual, but it is allowing for the fact that I'm now giving myself to God. It's an act of surrender. I found out that my I doesn't really exist, that only Brahman exists. So now I have to take this apparently individualized self and merge it into Brahman like a hailstone would fall in an ocean, Shankara says. So that's a qualified non-dual statement. Ishvara prayatna. It is God's will. It's like saying inshallah in Sufism, you see. It is God's will. So that's a qualified non-dual statement because You are separate from God in that statement. It's not my will, it's God's will, you see. So you're talking about two different entities there. But it's, of course, in a very positive and beneficial way. Shoka mayata, for God so desired. Well, there's no desire in God. And we just said God doesn't desire to create. You say God is aptakama, free of desire. Shiva, aptakama is one of his names. So he has no desires left. Krishna, no desires left, he says in the Gita. So he just comes to help people. That's his only desire, is to free people, if he has any desire whatsoever. So then you have these people who are these beings that have to take on this qualified non-dualistic perspective. And Sri Ramakrishna was teaching almost all the time from qualified non-dualism. You can't really teach from non-dualism because you don't really can't make any sense out of it. You know, you are that reality, and you're talking about that reality, and so there's not a lot to say. You see. But so in order to teach the Dharma, you'd have to come down to a qualified non-dual level in order to explain these things, and this is one way you would do it. It is God's will, for God so desired. Here's Niranjanaham. I am spotlessly pure. So this is taking what was impure and rendering it pure in your mind. See? So it could be classed as a non-dual statement, a qualified non-dual statement. Then, ekaham bahushyam, may I, the one, become many. So this is like from the standpoint of evolution, right? You're involved in your perfection, and then you decide all of a sudden to produce the many. So, of course, we would say Brahman doesn't do that, doesn't have a desire to become many. By being one, it can support the many, but the many are going to be produced by the Trinity or by the Word. That's why in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, you see. When there's a beginning and the Word is next to God, then creation is going on. But when it was God, there's no creation going on. You see, it was one with God. The Word and God meld. You see, they're one thing. So even that statement has its very dualistic, qualified non-dualistic, and non-dualistic ramifications that pertain to the cosmology and to the Word. Let's look then at these abhava padarthas. This is all, remember, in conjunction with sloka 9 and 8 and 9. 9, I'll reread it for you. Brahman is without doubt, endless, beyond reason, beyond analogy, beyond all proofs, and causeless, knowing that which the wise ones become free. So, beyond dualities then, and beyond the mind's power to reason is that Brahman. That's why earlier he said, the one who knows I am Brahman becomes the immutable Brahman, not those others. The Upanishad would say, to them belong peace and to none else. Only they know Brahman, no one else knows Brahman. So you have to arrive there at that consummate experience of it, which is Turiya here, and which is the cause of these statements, the causeless cause of those statements. So if you come to the abhava padarthas, you have people who have reached the highest state. Usually they've reached it through not this, a neti kind of process, or by seeing the emptiness of things, shunyata. Those kinds of souls have reached a very high state of non-duality. And like Sri Ramakrishna said, I run a boat race between these chakras, you see. So I go from throat to third eye to head and back to throat, you see. So he's at a very high level of consciousness, and his consciousness is shifting between non-dual, qualified non-dual, and the more dualistic levels. And so as that consciousness shifts, the soul's writing it, and it's making these analogies and these conclusions. So these are very, very sweet. I even have a couple from Hawaii that I added to the list, like diamonds at Diamond Head. the sailors went into Hawaii and they saw Diamond Head glittering. They thought it was diamonds. It was just obsidian. It was just lava. So it's a abhava padartha. It makes it look like something other than it is. So you run there to find it, and you find out it's not that at all. See? So that's basically like the world. You run there to find God, and you don't find it. So you end up basically unsatisfied with your life in time. And then only Brahman, oneness with Brahman, will satisfy you. Even living at a high state like this will not completely satisfy you because you haven't seen your true self yet. You've seen the ripe ego in deep sleep, you see, but you haven't seen the non-dual self yet, which is why the Advaitas like Gaudapada insist that you do that. No matter where you end up in the spectrum thereafter, you must have that one consummate experience that proves you to be one, that is non-dual or not two. Because where two-ness persists, there's always going to be doubts, fears, misgivings, curiosity, unsurety, uncertainty. So you must confirm this for yourself. So one of these abhava padarthas is silver in the mother of pearl. So you see a shell and you think there's real silver in there and you want to mine it and so forth, but it's really just mother of pearl. So one thing is acting like another. It's masquerading for the real thing, like a wooden nickel. Another one is Vandyaputra, son of a barren woman. So if I walk up to you in the street and I say, I saw the son of a barren woman down there, and I was talking to him, you see. You'll have to think about that for a minute, you see. It's completely nonsensical. There's no such thing as a son of a barren woman. So that's what they call one of these sayings regarding the real and the unreal. You know the person is speaking rubbish. So Sri Ramakrishna's story about that was the little boy came into the assembly of grown men and shouted out to them, "My father's cowshed has horses in it." And so they knew he was confused, you see, because you don't keep cows in a horse shed. These two animals have different functions. They operate differently. They're used for different purposes. There's all difference there, you see. So you don't keep one in the other, you see. You're going to have totally different apparatus for the cow, you see. So they knew the boy was speaking rubbish. And they just laughed. See? So that's kind of his idea. It's his own kind of abhava padartha. You don't talk about God as if, it has form or cause or beginning or it creates. Then you're talking rubbish. And so a lot of apparently wise people and philosophers are talking rubbish if they don't understand. And this is what Vedanta wants to clear up. It wants to clear it up for religion of the day. It wants to clear it up for science. And it wants to clear it up for the individual souls who are seeking truth. It's the voice of freedom. And it will make a Christian a better Christian, a Jew a better Jew, and it makes a Hindu a better Hindu. I mean, they know that already. So it's not an ism or a religion. They don't want to call it that. See? It's just the way of truth, of universal truth. You hear those things, they're just pretty much speaking about this from these other levels, but it's all about this. That's what India is about. I and my Father are one, was how we saw that back in Jesus' time, how we heard it. So son of a barren woman is a good one. There's also Tatapinda. Tatapinda means the heated iron ball. The Shankara's favorite, I think. So when the iron ball's heated, it turns red. But its true color is like black, isn't it? So it borrows the color red, and it borrows heat from fire. And so that's what everything here is doing. It's borrowing its ability to move, and it's borrowing its ability to breathe, and it's borrowing its ability to think from the Atman, from consciousness. But nobody knows that or makes that connection. They think, I move because of food energy. I breathe, I don't know anything about prana, but I breathe, you see. I don't know my own life force, but here I am breathing and I'm not even aware of it. Or I think, you see. but they don't know why they stop thinking in meditation, or why they stop thinking in deep sleep, and why the mind stops thinking at death. Those things aren't considered. So really they're not the master of any of those things, are they? Of the body, of the senses, of the prana, or of the mind. And that's why yoga wants you to master those. And they prefer you to start with the mind, and then watch the prana, body, senses, and everything fall into health, you see. And if you have to start from the ground up and try and get to the mind, that's an inferior way. Some people have to do that nonetheless. People with karmas. That's heated iron ball, so it borrows. So everything borrows everything from consciousness. How about Raju Sarpanyaya? Does that strike a bell in any of you? Raju Sarpanyaya. You've heard of it. It's called the snake and the rope. It's a famous Vedanta adage that all the Vedantists use from time out of mind, that a man was walking along. You can see down here. Is it down there? No, it's a different chart. I'm thinking of the three gunas, but man's walking along and he sees the in the twilight and dusk, and everything, and he sees this snake and he jumps in fear. But he expects it, and he sees it was really a rope. So he projected snake on rope. It never was a snake. It will never be a snake. Therefore, his fears were wrong, you see, were not founded. And his thinking was not clear. And the fear that he felt and his breathing increased, and his loathing. All of those were unreal, see. So we're continually projecting the world over Brahman, see. Brahman is the real rope, and the snake is what we're projecting over it all the time. And it's causing us fear, and it's causing us loathing, and it's causing us to think dually instead of non-dually. And this is part of the teaching of false superimposition, like the scum over the lake kind of teaching. You have to try and clarify that. We've been trying to look for this substance called alum, you see. We can't find it. As Sri Ramakrishna talked about, evidently the painter has this substance called alum, and he dips his paintbrush in his jar of water all the time, and then starts new paints, right? So pretty soon the jar becomes all brackish with different colors of paint. So he takes this little piece of alum and drops it in there, and it immediately clears up like magic. Clears all the paint out of the water, and he doesn't have to get up and go get new water. He just goes on with his important work of art. And, so of course, Ramakrishna, you know what he's talking about. If you had a magic element like alum and you could just stick it in your mind and it would clarify everything, see, then all false superimposition would go away. You wouldn't be thinking wrongly. You wouldn't have wrong perspective. It's so important to have right perspective, particularly when you start into the spiritual path. That's why healers and shamans and therapists and people like that, if they're worth their snuff and true to their trade, then they will be trying to clear the mind for higher things, because the mind has collected these dark brackish colors from life, and they want you to get this bit of alum and clear it up. So Sri Ramakrishna had beautiful stories like that were analogies for spiritual life. The last one here is stanu manusya, man in a stump. I've experienced this myself personally, walking, because I like to walk late at night, and up where I live there's no street lights, so I'll go out on these long walks through these country roads. And sometimes the moon's out, and then the cloud covers it, and the moon's out, So you're walking along this road, and it's dark, and there's no one around, and, it's a little scary. So all of a sudden, the moon comes out, and it lights up the field you're walking by, and you see this man there, where nobody should be, right? So you have a start like that, Inspect it closer, you see it's just a stump, you see. Stanu manusya. So this is how the seers describe you putting things you fear over things that are not to be feared, to superimpose something over another thing, to put a veil in front of it and then believe that the veil is real, but never believe that what it covers is real, you see. So they had to come up with sayings like this, just one or two words, 4-syllable words that that were methods, that spoke of methods to clear your mind, like a piece of alum that you'd put inside of it. So you wouldn't suffer false superimposition anymore. You'd see things as they were. Well, we can conclude this chart by looking at these great sayings of the Shaktas, because since so much of our path, my own path, is about Divine Mother of the Universe, that's called Shaktism. So you have this fealty and this love for the Mahashakti, for Mahamaya, for Divine Mother. And this is good to take this up right now because it's the 4th day of Navaratri, Divine Mother worship, where millions of souls are all of a sudden bringing Divine Mother to the fore of their consciousness again and worshiping her and thinking of her and meditating on her and having great gratitude for how she keeps the light in the worlds, in the dark world. She keeps the light there. So some of these great sayings of the Shaktas, one would be Bhakti, Mukti, Jnanam Dehi. May she bestow devotion, liberation, and knowledge. Bhakti, Mukti, Jnanam Dehi. So that's a saying of the Shaktas that they favor. Prabuddha Sarvada Tishtat. Get the ever awakened. Almost Buddhist. Mother of the Buddhist kind of flavor to it. You see, Pragyaparamita. Prabuddha Sarvada Tishtat. Prabuddha means awakened intelligence. So get the awakened. Before that you said, get thee to a nunnery, maybe. And then you said, and when you do, get thee awakened. Don't just go there to join a church and die in a church. Saham, she, I am. So you can see that I put these here because they're pretty much flavored with duality, qualified non-dualism, and non-dualism, aren't they? The last one is basically like a Mahavakya for the Shaktas. Saham, she, I am she. So they're identifying with the Divine Mother of the Universe as their chosen ideal. And we know that she's unlike any other chosen ideal in existence. She's inexplicable that way. She's one with Brahman, yet she oversees the worlds of name and form, yet she herself is formless. Yet she can take forms. Yet she herself wants you to get free of forms. Yet, if you're in form, she wants you to live fully. Yet. So you can go back and forth about her and have a good time trying to figure her out. There's one song that has a beautiful line in it that says, "O mind, strive with all your energy, with all your intelligence to understand the Mother of the Universe. You'll never be able to do it, but in the attempt, you'll gain her grace. In the end, you'll get awakened, Prabhuda Sarvada Tishtat. So the attempt of trying to understand her will purify the mind, but you'll never know who she is. She's that unique. Behind the scenes all the time, so very difficult to find. The word Durga means difficult. So it means that she's very difficult to gain a vision of. Another line of a song of India says, mountain yogis spend lifetimes in dark caves trying to see her. And if they do get a vision of her, which is very rare, they're making sure they're in a essentially deprived place where it's dark in the cave, because when the light happens, they want to enjoy it fully, when they see her come out of the light. They say that when Divine Mother appears in a form, the four Vedas are singing her appearance. The four Vedas start reciting themselves. You see, like this book would stand up and start saying, I am Brahman, and I am causeless, and I am... So that's what they start doing before she appears. All four Vedas, all four faces of Brahma start singing these Vedas, and then she appears. So that's like her introduction. She's about to come. It's like a great trumpet herald. You see, a great brass fanfare that the most august and unique being in the three worlds is about to enter form, you see. So, very beautiful to think like that and to talk like that at this time, the fourth day of Navaratri. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed and benefited at this look of the divine sayings, because all coming out of sloka 7 and 8, which were about Om, especially 7 is that unique sloka. It tells you how to meditate on the word. And that's why yesterday's class was spent entirely on that. Now, in accord with this too, I wanted to show you another chart. We have just probably enough time for it. You'll recognize this as the cover to my book, The Avadut, which was put together in my mind to try and put as many of the 24 teachers of the Avadut on one piece of art as I could. So there you'll see there, and these are the teachers of the Avadut. When he went out walking, he came upon these beings in his peregrinations. And when he saw them being who he was, he sat and watched them for days. You see? So if he saw a cockroach, he'd sit and watch it. If he saw an osprey, he'd sit and watch it day to day, because everything to him was saying something. But if you just pass by and look at it briefly, then you'll never know what it's saying and what its meaning is and what message it has in nature. So when I came upon these slokas in what's called the Uddhava Gita, where Sri Krishna was teaching Uddhava, he mentions just very sparsely the 24 teachers of the Avadut in 24 slokas. I think 25 or 26 slokas. It doesn't say anything about them. So he said, well, there's a book, you see. So I'll take Sri Krishna's mention of the 24 teachers in nature and write stories around them, how the Avadut actually came upon these beings. So this I used as a cover of a book, but now I've used it as the background to this chart on the 6 complements and 10 immutables of the Paramatman, or of your true self, what your true self really consists of. And that's an easy study, but a very profound meditation or contemplation. I mean, the 6 complements of your Atman are unbounded freedom. I'm describing you now. Sit up and pay attention. See? If you fall asleep, then you'll get zapped. So I'm describing you, your true self. See? Unbounded freedom, that's you. That's called Sarvatantra Svatantratvam in Sanskrit. That's upper left. Across the board, Ananta Shaktimatvam. You have infinite power in you. And of course this sounds like Swami Vivekananda. He was always talking about how the soul has infinite power in it to do anything it wants. See? Hopefully you use it right. Your soul, your Paramatman, supreme Atman, your supreme soul is Sarvagyatvam, perfect omniscience. So it's all-knowing. Like I was saying in the first half, right, that Swamiji said, education is a manifestation of the knowledge that's already in the soul, right? That's almost like a great saying, you see. So it's a Mahavakya of the day at a qualified non-dual level. He also said religion is a manifestation of the divinity that's already in the soul, you see. So you can't run look for an education or run look for religion. It's already in you. Like the scent of the musk deers in the musk deer. So sometimes when I speak to children in class, and all the teachers sweat it out a bit when they have me, I say, what are you doing here again? You did this all last lifetime. Just meditate on your past lifetimes and bring all the knowledge in you forward. You don't have to go to school again, get a degree, try and make money. In fact, those things are actually failing people. Why don't you sit and meditate as the witness of your own past lifetimes and see how much you learned there and bring it forward? Then if you're missing something, go to school. Don't just go and learn the same thing over and over again in humdrum fashion and put everyone through that, both the teacher and the student suffering. You see? So I'm a teacher of the Dharma, so here I am sharing the Dharma with you, If you've never learned it in a past lifetime, it just means you're not aware that you've learned it in a past lifetime. You've forgotten it, or you've distanced yourself from it, or Maya has become so thick in this age that you're not remembering it anymore. Or false superimpositions. Veils have dropped in this lifetime for whatever reason, karmas, bad upbringing, and diseases and so forth. And now you just need to recall it. So nothing new under the sun. This is what this is saying. All these things are you, whether you want to. Anadi bodhatvam, integral knowledge is in you, which is very much associated with perfect omniscience. All the knowledge, that's why when you read a book and you like it, you're identifying with the knowledge that's already within you. If the knowledge wasn't already within you, and the book told you something, you wouldn't identify with it at all. So the book is telling you things about yourself. And that's actually a good analogy for Swami Vivekananda used to say the Atman is reading the book of nature. He used that as an analogy. So the Atman is born in a body, picks up nature, flips through the book of nature every page, reads the last page, closes it and puts it down, and nothing happened to the Atman. It knew all this already, because this was its own book. See? So all of this, all the kingdoms of heaven lie within you. Imagine taking this perspective as a change of heart or a change of mind. Like somebody told me recently, I've just seen the full solar eclipse. I'll never be the same again. I said, yes, you will. See, you'll just be the same old self tomorrow and forget about it. Because you've seen dozens of solar eclipses and they've never changed you one whit. That can be either a good or a bad thing. If you're unconscious, it's a bad thing. But if you're conscious, you know that solar eclipses are happening. What you want is the sun of knowledge to show itself to you. That's anadi bodhatvam. You have integral knowledge within you already, shining like a billion suns. What are those called? Gyanamatras. What's a Gyanamatra? It's a sun of knowledge. You know our founder Lex Hixon, Adam in the sun of knowledge, the book he wrote in Sufism. Adam in the sun of knowledge. Well, he knows that the mind is made of particles just like these are made of particles, right? All these particles around you, if you were to gather them together, could blow up the world. Scientist said that to my teacher once. Oh, if you could collect all the atoms from your car, your Vedanta Society car, you could blow up the world with it. And Swami said, but why would I want to do that? See? So the scientist is leading towards power, and the luminary is leading towards perfection. And some want power and some want perfection. Some want God, some want Rolls Royces, he used to say. No, only names here being inferred. So some want power, some want peace. So the illumined soul wants peace. But the point I'm making here is that just like there are atomic particles in here that contain infinite power, there are particles in your mind from which these objects came that contain the power of thought. And that's much more powerful than physical energy. Much more powerful. This explodes. Your Gyanamatras inside implode. See? All you have to do is take your mind, like an electron microscope, focus it, it's called concentration, on a bit of knowledge, explode that Gyanamatra and get bliss. Out of the outer explosion of the physical objects, particles, comes destruction. Out of the implosion of the mental thought comes perfection, comes refinement, comes purity. So you would rather, if you're desiring peace instead of power, or peace instead of war, in this case, meditate on these particles inside of you and implode them. And you get bliss as a result. That's why they're so blissful without owning anything. Why Sri Ramakrishna just sat around smiling in bliss and looking inside of himself. Ramana Maharshi sat there in a state, didn't own a thing, but he was exceedingly blissful. Eternal contentment. So it's like saying aptakama again. God has no desires. Shiva has no desires. Krishna has no desires. They just are in any given space and time. They have this unique jewel of great price, this peace that passeth all understanding. They have that. It's a compliment to their soul, and they've realized. Finally, you have nityatvam, perpetual existence. Nitya means eternal. So you have eternal existence, and we spoke about that in the first half of the class, right? Is that actually at the beginning of this half, everything's eternal. Nature, Maya, the soul, Brahman, everything is eternal. So if you realize that, then how could you not help but assign it to yourself? You exist at all times. There's never a time when you don't exist. If you believe in a void, then you should probably avoid the void. See? Because somebody saw the void, came back and gave it a name. Who was that named the void, you see? So how can the void be ultimate? How can you fear it? Like at death, oh, I think I'm going into a void, I don't exist anymore. But you are existence because you named the void, having seen it at your last death. There was someone looking on, you see, when you died. And there'll be someone looking on when you're born. And finally, the third eye will be looking on when you give up birth and death. That round. You'll give it up completely. And nihilism. Avoid the void. These are Babaji-isms, you see, based on these great teachings which show you that the Advaita is free. Then there are 10 immutables to the soul. Absolute knowledge, jnanam, vairagya, mature dispassion, atma sambodha, self-awareness, aishvarya, supreme lordship, shrastritva, abundant creativity, tapas, inconceivable power, dritti, immutable stability, satyam, non-dual truth, and adishvaratvam, full dominion. These are what they call the 10 immutables of the Atman. These are two different lists which I like to gather together and put in two different phases of time, put it in one chart, just in case there's anything left out or any doubt left in your mind that this is who you are, or this is who the seers say you are, whether you've realized it or not. This is the nature of awareness, pure conscious awareness, timeless, deathless consciousness. This is its constituency. This is its essence, as Sloka 6 appears said, Swarupa. It's the essence of yourself. So down below, Sri Ramakrishna says, there is one supreme essence called Paramatman. It is formless. But seekers of the formless often make this one mistake. They forget that it is also imbued with infinite power. Living beings, the universe, mind, intelligence, love, renunciation, knowledge, these are the manifestations of its power. Thus I accept not only Brahman, but also Maya, the universe, and its living beings. This was the kind of soul Sri Ramakrishna was, all comprehensive and all-seeing, all-knowing, all-accepting. That even Maya was a part of Brahman, he said. The snake has poison in it, right? So Maya is in Brahman. The power of evil is their potential in consciousness. So it just all is a matter of which seeds you're going to want to water and which ones you're not going to want to water anymore. Till no seeds exist anymore. You've burned them all over the fire of knowledge, and you're free, like the Advaita is free. Well, in the remaining time, which is just a few minutes, you can see in that image there, and actually this is also available through SRV and through myself without any of the words. You can actually get the book cover and frame it, put it on your wall with all these teachers of the Advaita there. So you can play a board game with it with your kids, and say, well, that's a free soul there. Teach them about the free soul. That gives you the end to do that. And then say, how many of the teachers of the Advaita can you find here, my dear? You see, oh, what's that? That's the python. Oh, what's the python represent? And you teach them like that, you see. So basically here at the table of contents, you've got the python being contentedness. Why was that? Because it sat in one place and waited for its food to come to it. It didn't go anywhere. So the avadut sat looking at it sitting in one place. So the avadut had to be more patient than the python for its food, because he watched it for days until finally a rabbit or something hopped by and you see. And he knew then, he saluted the python. He said, "Oh, I see, you're the epitome of contentedness. You're my teacher for contentedness." And he saluted the python and walked away. So that's all in a chapter if you want to read it to the kids, you see, or to your own inner child, as they say, so that you can get over the inner child and become the true adult that you are. Now, there's say the elephant is up there, So the elephant, he watched the elephant for a long time and how they acted and everything. And he saw that basically they epitomized detachment. You see, the elephant epitomizes detachment. The moth is there. The moth represented heedfulness, actually really heedlessness, because lots of these teachings were put in a positive way, but they came from negative experiences. So he saw the moth fly into the forest fire one day, where he was not going near it, you see. He was going the other way, so he was heedful. The moth was heedless, flying into the flames. But there were many shades of teaching to the moth, because it made him think of his old teachers, you see, and how they said that the soul loves to go to the bonfire of God and dissolve itself there. So he's also thinking the moth could also represent transcendental oneness. Is that when the hailstone sees the ocean, it says, "I'm going to merge there in my essence," you see, because I've solidified a bit of the ocean. We called it me, and that's not true. Now I'm going to dissolve myself in the ocean and feel that all these things, infinite power, bliss, eternity. I'll be my old self again. A lot of people, and one even spoke to me at the break today about it, say that they're afraid of death because they'll leave their children behind, and they really want to see what their children are doing. So, have to give them teachings like this to say, really, you become your children. Your body is what's keeping you apart from your children. Aren't bodies problems? Bodies are barriers. So, unless you're able to solve those barriers, which is a difficult thing in this day and age, then when the body goes away, you love the person even more, which was the case of the 16 apostles of Ramakrishna. They thought they would feel very sorry when he passed, and they would weep and cry. But when he passed, they felt him in them. Ramakrishna left his body, which was one location, and entered into 16 other locations, which was the 16 direct disciples, and they felt blissful at his death. So this is a very high, and this is recorded in Gospel of Ramakrishna and other books of our tradition. So when you have that kind of awareness, then you'll know that your children have come from you, and when they took on a body, they separated from you. That life is separation, and that death is union. So you'll think entirely different about birth, death, life, and put eternal life out front of it. And this is what Jesus was teaching the fishermen. You have loaves, you have nets, you have wives, you have children. But come, I'll make you fishers of men. You need to have a spiritual life. You need to know about eternal life, not just worldly life. So I think we're running out of time, but you get the gist here. This great book about the 24 teachers of the Avatut, you can use it in many sweet ways, like with your children, to teach them in a very natural way about what appears on earth and how to see its true significance. And by observing like that, being a witness of objects, then you can master objects, quit fearing them, know that they all come out of you, and you can begin to have experiences where you are declaring, I am the objectless reality. I am the eternal subject, not the infernal object. So here's a good place to end with a chant. Om Bhadram Karnebihi Srinayama Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabir Yajatraha Stirairangaish Tushtuvam Sastanavir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual, hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting, and may we while worshiping the Lord and Mother of the universe with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.